Emma's ribs screamed with each desperate step through the snow, but her husband's drunken roars behind her meant death if she stopped. The thin nightgown offered no protection against the bitter wind that cut through the Nebraska territory, and her bare feet left bloody prints in the white drifts. She had endured 3 years of Thomas's fists, his belt, his boots, when the whiskey made him cruel. Tonight, when he'd reached for his rifle after beating her unconscious, survival finally overcame terror. The prairie stretched endlessly before her, empty except for scattered stands of cottonwoods that offered no shelter. Her breath came in ragged clouds as hypothermia began stealing her strength. She stumbled, fell, dragged herself upright, and kept running. Behind her, Thomas's curses grew fainter, but Emma knew he would follow come morning. He considered her his property, no different from his horse or his plow. When her legs finally gave out, she collapsed beside a frozen creek, her body shaking violently. The cold felt almost merciful now, promising an end to years of pain. She closed her eyes, thinking of the baby she'd lost to one of Thomas's rages, and wondered if dying in the snow was really worse than living as his victim. Voices drifted through her fading consciousness, deep, unfamiliar words in a language she didn't recognize. Footsteps crunched through snow, moving with careful deliberation. Emma tried to force her eyes open, expecting Thomas had found her, but the approaching figure wore buckskin and moved with a quiet dignity that belonged to no white man she'd ever known. The Lakota Chief knelt slowly beside her, his weathered face showing concern rather than anger. When Emma flinched weakly away, he spoke soft words she couldn't understand, but somehow found comforting. An elderly woman appeared beside him, her skilled hands checking Emma's condition with gentle efficiency. "She is dying from cold," the woman said in accented English. "We must bring her to warmth quickly." The chief nodded and began removing his heavy fur coat. Emma's mind screamed warnings about strange men and their intentions, but her body had no strength left for resistance. He wrapped the coat around her with movements so careful they seemed like reverence, then lifted her as easily as he might carry a child. "Sleep now," he murmured, and Emma found herself believing that perhaps, for the first time in years, sleep might not bring punishment. Through the haze of near unconsciousness, she felt herself carried into warmth and set down on something soft. The chief stepped back immediately, giving her space even in her helpless state. As darkness claimed her, Emma wondered if she had died after all, because surely no man alive could be this gentle with a woman's broken body. Emma woke to unfamiliar warmth and the scent of sage, her body tensing for the blow that always came after sleep. Instead, she found herself wrapped in soft furs within a buffalo hide lodge, warm sunlight filtering through the smoke hole above. No harsh voice demanded her presence. No heavy footsteps approaching her bed meant immediate pain. An elderly native woman sat nearby, stirring something fragrant in an iron pot. When she noticed Emma's open eyes, she smiled with genuine kindness. "I am Winona," she said in careful English. "You are safe here." Safe. Emma had almost forgotten what the word meant. She tried to sit up and gasped as her injuries protested. Purple-black bruises covered her arms and ribs, testament to Thomas's latest fury. Winona moved closer with practiced efficiency, checking Emma's condition with gentle hands. "Your body needs healing time," Winona observed. "The chief, Maddo, found you near death. You have slept for 2 days." Through the lodge opening, Emma glimpsed the man who'd saved her. Chief Maddo stood with several other warriors, discussing something in their musical language. When their eyes met across the distance, he nodded respectfully but made no move to approach. Emma found herself studying his face, searching for signs of the cruelty she'd learned to expect from men. Instead, she saw only patient concern. "He frightens you," Winona observed, following Emma's gaze. "All men frighten me," Emma whispered, then felt ashamed of the admission. Winona's expression softened with understanding. "Maddo will not come near unless you wish it. He honors a woman's boundaries above all else." As if he'd sensed their conversation, Maddo approached the lodge entrance and spoke quietly to Winona in Lakota. The elderly woman nodded and turned back to Emma. "He asks if you are strong enough for soup. He wishes to bring it himself, to show respect, but only if his presence does not cause you distress." Emma's stomach clenched with hunger, but years of Thomas's unpredictable violence made her hesitate. Yet something in Maddo's patient stance suggested he would accept whatever answer she gave without anger. "Tell him yes," she whispered. Maddo entered with deliberate slowness, carrying a wooden bowl of fragrant broth. He set it carefully within Emma's reach, then retreated to the lodge's far side, settling cross-legged with his back partially turned to give her privacy while eating. No words, no demands, no expectations beyond her basic need for nourishment. For the first time in 3 years, Emma ate without fearing someone would steal her food or strike her for eating too slowly. The simple act of consuming warm soup without terror felt like the most profound luxury imaginable. When she finished, Maddo rose quietly and collected the empty bowl. Their eyes met briefly, and Emma saw something in his gaze she'd never encountered before. Respect for her as a person rather than property. "Thank you," she managed to say. Maddo smiled slightly and said something to Winona before leaving. The elderly woman chuckled. "He says you're brave to survive what brought you to us. He hopes you will heal in both body and spirit." Emma pulled the warm furs closer around herself, marveling at this strange new world where men spoke of her healing rather than her usefulness. The sound of approaching horses sent Emma diving behind the lodge wall, her heart hammering memories of her husband's return. Through a gap in the buffalo hide, she watched 3 white men ride into the Lakota camp with the swagger of those accustomed to getting their way. Their leader, a hard-faced trader with tobacco-stained teeth, dismounted and strode directly toward Chief Maddo. "We're looking for a stolen woman," the trader announced loudly. "White woman, brown hair, probably half dead. Her husband's offering good money for her return." Emma's blood turned to ice. Thomas had sent bounty hunters. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows, her body shaking with familiar terror. These men would drag her back to face punishments worse than anything she'd already endured. Matto stood with calm dignity, his warriors flanking him in a show of quiet strength. "No white women here," he replied in English more fluent than Emma had expected. "Only our people. Don't lie to me, Chief. Got tracks leading right to your camp. She's here somewhere, and we're taking her back where she belongs." The trader stepped closer, aggression radiating from his stance. Emma had seen that same posture countless times before Thomas struck her. But Maddo didn't flinch or retreat. Instead, he straightened to his full impressive height, his presence commanding respect through sheer force of character. "You come to our camp making demands," Maddo said, his voice carrying unmistakable authority. "You insult our hospitality with accusations. I told you truth, no white women here. You may search if you wish, but you will find nothing." Emma held her breath as the traders spread out, poking into lodges and scanning faces. When one approached Winona's lodge, the elderly woman stepped outside, blocking his path with surprising firmness. "Sacred healing space," she declared. "You bring bad spirits if you enter without permission." The trader hesitated, clearly unfamiliar with native customs but unwilling to risk supernatural consequences. After a tense moment, he backed away. Emma realized that Matto had positioned his people to protect her without revealing her presence, creating a shelter of collective will. "She's here somewhere," the lead trader growled, mounting his horse. "We'll be back with more men." "You are welcome to try," Matto replied evenly, "but results will be same." As the traders rode away, cursing and making threats, Emma emerged from hiding on trembling legs. Matto approached slowly, his expression gentle but serious. "They will return," he said quietly. "Your husband wants you badly." "He thinks I'm his property," Emma whispered, shame and fear warring in her voice. "He'll never stop hunting me." Matto studied her face with those patient, knowing eyes. "Property cannot choose its fate, but you are not property. You are woman with spirit and strength. The choice of staying or leaving belongs to you alone." Emma stared at him, stunned by the simple, revolutionary concept. Thomas had never given her choices about anything, not even which dress to wear or what food to eat. The idea that she might have agency over her own future felt as foreign as the Lakota language. "What if I choose to stay?" she asked, barely daring to voice the hope. "Then you stay," Matto said simply. "My people protect those seeking shelter. No one takes you from here against your will." For the first time since childhood, Emma felt the radical possibility of safety that didn't depend on her perfect obedience or invisible presence. Emma's hand trembled as she reached toward the fire, still expecting someone to strike it away. 3 weeks had passed since the trader's visit, and slowly, carefully, she was learning to exist without constant fear. The simple act of warming her hands had become a small daily victory over years of conditioned terror. Winona watched her with knowing eyes as they worked together preparing evening meal. Under the elderly woman's patient guidance, Emma was learning Lakota ways of cooking and healing, finding purpose in tasks that felt like choices rather than demands. "Your bruises fade," Winona observed, crushing dried herbs between her palms. "But healing of spirit takes longer than healing of flesh." Emma nodded, absently touching her ribs where Thomas's boots had left their mark. The physical pain was nearly gone, but she still flinched at unexpected sounds, still woke some nights, gasping from nightmares where her husband's voice called her name like a death sentence. Chief Matto appeared in the lodge entrance, waiting for permission before entering. This ritual of respect had become precious to Emma. The revolutionary concept that her consent mattered, that her space held sanctity no man could violate without invitation. "Come in," she said, no longer struggling with the words. Matto settled across the fire from her, maintaining careful distance while sharing the warmth. Over the past weeks, their evening conversations had become a healing ritual. He listened as she shared fragments of her story, never pressing for details but offering quiet understanding when words became too difficult. "Tell me about your childhood," he said gently, "before the darkness came." Emma smiled slightly, remembering a time when the world held wonder instead of terror. "My father raised horses, beautiful animals, powerful but gentle when treated with respect. I used to help him train the young ones, teaching them to trust human touch. Like healing frightened spirits, Matto observed. Yes, exactly like that. Emma looked at him with sudden recognition. You're doing the same thing with me, aren't you? Moving slowly, proving yourself trustworthy, never forcing connection. Matto's eyes crinkled with gentle humor. Wise women and horses both recognize authentic intention. Patience teaches what force never can. The comparison should have offended her, but instead Emma felt understood in a way Thomas had never bothered attempting. This man saw her as a creature deserving of gentle breaking in, not a thing to be broken under dominance. I used to dream of having a horse of my own, she continued. A mare, maybe, who would choose to stay with me because she trusted me, not because she was trapped. And now, Emma considered the question seriously. Now, I think I understand what those horses felt. The difference between choosing to stay and being forced to remain. That night, when familiar nightmares jarred her awake with Thomas's rage echoing in her ears, she found Matto's calm voice drifting across the lodge's darkness. You are safe, Emma. He cannot reach you here. Sleep now, and let peace find you. His words became a lullaby that carried her back into gentle dreams where she ran free across endless prairies, no longer fleeing, but simply moving toward something beautiful, waiting just beyond the horizon. Emma's husband appeared at the camp's edge like a nightmare made flesh, his face twisted with familiar rage and 3 days of hard riding. Behind him rode a dozen armed men, their intentions written in the set of their shoulders and the way their hands rested near their weapons. Thomas had come in force, prepared to take back what he considered stolen property. Emma! His voice cracked across the winter air like a whip. Get out here now, woman. Time to come home and face what you've earned. Emma's knees nearly buckled at the sound that had preceded countless beatings, but Winona's steady hand gripped her arm, offering strength. Around the camp, Lakota warriors emerged from lodges with quiet dignity, positioning themselves between the white men and their chief. No weapons drawn, but their presence spoke of absolute resolve. Matto walked forward with unhurried steps, his authority unmistakable even facing superior numbers. You come to our camp with threats and demands. This is not your land or your people. Thomas dismounted, his drunken swagger barely concealing desperate fury. That's my wife cowering behind your savages, Chief. Law says she belongs to me and I'm taking her home. Your law, Matto replied calmly, not ours. Here, women choose their own path. She's got no choice. She's married to me in the eyes of God and government both. Emma felt the familiar paralysis creeping through her limbs, the voice of learned helplessness whispering that resistance only brought worse pain. For 3 years, that voice had kept her alive by making her small, invisible, compliant. But now, surrounded by people who valued her autonomy, she found a different voice rising from somewhere deep inside. I choose to stay here, she called out, her voice shaking but clear. Thomas's face contorted with disbelief and rage. You don't get to choose anything. Get over here before I drag you back by your hair. He started forward with the confident stride of a man accustomed to female submission, but Matto stepped smoothly into his path. The chief's movements held no aggression, but his presence radiated immovable strength. She has spoken her choice. You will honor it. Like hell I will. Thomas reached for the pistol at his belt. In one fluid motion, Matto's warriors surrounded the white men, their own weapons appearing with deadly efficiency. The odds had shifted dramatically, and even drunk on rage, Thomas possessed enough survival instinct to recognize superior force. "This isn't over," he snarled, but his hand fell away from his gun. "Wife-stealing heathens can't keep her forever." "I am not stolen," Emma said, stepping closer to Matto's protective presence. "I am choosing. For the first time in my life, I am choosing." As Thomas and his men rode away, hurling curses and threats, Emma realized the profound truth of her words. She wasn't just seeking shelter anymore. She was actively selecting a life where love meant safety instead of ownership, where strength protected rather than dominated. Matto's eyes met hers across the space between them, and for the first time, Emma stepped forward instead of back, closing the distance between fear and trust with her own deliberate choice. Spring returned to the prairie, and for the first time in years, Emma felt the sun's warmth without fear. The winter had changed her in ways deeper than healing bruises or learning new languages. She moved through the camp now with quiet confidence, no longer the terrified woman who'd collapsed in the snow, but someone discovering her own strength within a community that valued her spirit. The seasonal ceremony marking new beginnings drew tribal members from neighboring camps. Emma helped Winona prepare traditional foods, her hands now skilled with tasks that felt like celebration rather than drudgery. Children who'd initially stared at her pale skin now included her in their games, teaching her Lakota words with giggly patience. Matto found her by the river where she'd gone to collect water, the simple task a meditation of gratitude for safety. He approached with the same careful respect he'd shown since that first night, but something in his manner suggested an important conversation awaited. "The earth awakens," he said, gesturing toward new green shoots pushing through the last patches of snow. "All things have their season for renewal." Emma nodded, understanding that his words carried deeper meaning than botanical observation. Over the months, their relationship had grown with the same gentle patience he'd shown her healing. Friendship had deepened into something warmer, more fundamental, but always at her pace, always honoring her boundaries. "I have a question to ask you," Matto continued, his voice holding unusual formality. "But first, you must know that your answer, whatever it may be, does not change your place among us. You are welcome here always as family, regardless of what you decide." Emma's heart quickened, sensing the significance of the moment. "What question?" "Will you become my wife? Not from law or duty, but from choice. Not because you need protection, but because two spirits have found harmony together." The proposal was everything Thomas's demands had never been. Respectful, patient, offering rather than taking. Emma looked into Matto's eyes and saw a future where marriage meant partnership instead of ownership, where her voice would matter in every decision affecting their shared life. "Yes," she said simply, the word carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Matto's smile transformed his usually serious features, and slowly, ceremoniously, he reached out his hand. Emma placed her palm against his, marveling at how this touch felt nothing like the grasping possession she'd known before. This was connection freely given and joyfully received. "We will have the joining ceremony when the moon is full," he said. "Our people will witness your choice to become one of us completely." As they walked back toward camp together, Emma realized that Thomas's greatest cruelty hadn't been his fists or his threats, but his theft of her agency. He'd taught her to believe she had no choices, no value beyond her usefulness to his comfort. But here, surrounded by people who honored her autonomy, she discovered that freedom wasn't just the absence of chains, it was the presence of genuine alternatives freely chosen. The prairie stretched before them, no longer endless emptiness but infinite possibility. For the first time in her adult life, Emma looked toward tomorrow with anticipation instead of dread, knowing that whatever lay ahead, she would meet it standing beside someone who valued her strength rather than exploiting her vulnerability. Her new life was beginning, built on the revolutionary foundation of love without ownership, protection without domination, and partnership between equals who chose each other daily.